faithfully delivering value and exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. Today I'm going to explore the book The Future of Life. In April 2021, 15 Asian wild elephants from Yunnan Province, China, left the Xishuangbanna Nature Reserve and embarked on an unprecedented journey, marching grandly northward for hundreds of kilometers. Ultimately, with human protection and guidance, the elephant herd safely returned to their habitat. Amid all the attention on the elephant herd, wildlife conservation became a hot topic again. Why humans need to protect wildlife and maintain biodiversity? That's the future of life. This is the core issue this book tackles. The term biodiversity was first coined by the book's author, American biologist and National Academy of Sciences member Edward O. Wilson, who's known as the father of biodiversity. The second phase, Wilson grew up by the sea and had a deep interest in biology from a young age, dreaming of becoming a biologist. However, he was born insensitive to high-pitched sounds, and worse, at age 7, while fishing, an accident blinded him in his right eye. He had to focus on studying small organisms. The optimistic and resilient Wilson eventually made major breakthroughs in ant research, earning him the title Ant King. Wilson won over 100 awards, including the U.S. National Medal of Science, the Crafoord Prize from the Royal Swedish Academy, and the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, and was named one of America's 25 most influential people by Time magazine. The Future of Life. The book's preface is a letter from Wilson to his idol Henry David Thoreau, author of Walden. In the letter, Wilson and Thoreau have a conversation spanning 150 years. Wilson and Thoreau strolled together by Walden Pond, rediscovering the beauty of biodiversity. Then Wilson openly tells Thoreau about the threats human activities pose to nature, sharing his thoughts on biodiversity challenges and the future of life. Next, I'll break down the book's main ideas into 4 parts. First, how incredibly diverse are Earth's species? Second, what's the value of biodiversity? Third, what threats is biodiversity facing? Fourth, how can we protect biodiversity? First off, let's get to know biodiversity and understand just how rich Earth's species diversity is. Biodiversity refers to the total of all animals, plants, microorganisms, their genes, and habitats in the biosphere, made up of 3 layers: genetic diversity, ecosystem diversity, and species diversity. Among these, species diversity showcases the abundance of biological resources and reflects the complex relationships between organisms and their environments, forming the heart of biodiversity. Time, P. Let's dive into species diversity on Earth. From the peak of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, every inch of space teems with diverse life. They follow biogeography's basic rule: wherever there's liquid water, organic molecules, and energy, life thrives, even in overlooked corners. Recent research from Indiana University in the U.S. suggests Earth might harbor up to 1 trillion different species, yet scientists have only identified about 2 million, meaning 99.99% remain unknown. We can't help but marvel at nature's miraculous creative power. The McMurdo Dry Valleys in Antarctica are a classic example. Due to year-round freezing cold, the soil there is the world's coldest, driest, and most nutrient-poor. At first glance, this landscape looks like Mars with no signs of life. Although the first Antarctic explorer, Scott, left valuable footprints, he found no life in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. With ongoing tech advances, microscopic views reveal a totally different scene. On this parched riverbed, there are 20 species of photosynthetic bacteria, diverse single-celled algae, and tiny invertebrates feeding on them, with summer meltwater providing an annual growth spurt. These species surviving in brutally harsh conditions are called extremophiles by scientists, living at absolute limits. As research deepens, scientists keep finding new extremophiles in extreme spots like volcanic vents and deep-sea trenches. Not only are new species constantly found in extreme places like Antarctica, but in regular settings, life is even more diverse. Natural greenhouses, like tropical rainforests, rivers, and oceans produce record-breaking biodiversity reports per unit area. For instance, in a corner of Peru's Manu National Park, there are 1,300 species of butterflies, 10 times more than in similar regions in Europe. On a forest path in the upper Amazon basin, researchers discovered 365 species of ants and even identified 43 species on a single tree. In just 1 gram of Amazon soil, there could be thousands of species of bacteria, yet humans have become the dominant force on Earth. However, in merely tens of thousands of years, within Earth's 4.6 billion year history, countless organisms have been nurtured. What does such rich diversity mean for us humans? Why should we promote protecting biodiversity? In part 2, let's talk about the value of biodiversity. Biodiversity is the foundation of life on Earth. For humans, biodiversity has direct use value, indirect use value, and potential use value. Direct use value is easy to understand. The variety of fruits and veggies in our diet, cotton and silk for fabrics, and household furniture all come from biodiversity, directly supporting all sorts of industries. Indirect use value refers to the ecological functions of biodiversity. In ecosystems, each species holds a specific place in biological communities, with interdependent and constraining relationships, collectively maintaining dynamic balance and providing essential conditions for human survival, such as food, water, and breathable air, while also shielding humans from natural disasters and diseases. And, for example, regulating climate, preventing floods and pests. Once wildlife declines, ecosystem stability gets disrupted. Human living environments will then be impacted. Let's grasp its importance through a case of forest biodiversity destruction. Forest vegetation retains and purifies rainwater, so forested watersheds produce clean water sources, which flow into lakes or oceans for other organisms. New York City once enjoyed generations of super pure water from the Catskill Mountains, with bottled water from this source once popular in the northeastern U.S. However, as the local population increased, more mountains and forests were cleared and turned into farms or resorts. The variety and numbers of plants, animals, and microorganisms in the mountains have sharply declined. Sewage and agricultural wastewater gradually degraded the local water quality below EPA standards, making it undrinkable. So how could they reclaim that once pure water source? New York City faced 2 options: spend $6 minus $8 billion building a water treatment plant with $300 million annual operating costs, or invest about $1 billion restoring the Catskills forests with minimal yearly upkeep to secure drinking water. Clearly, restoring and maintaining the Catskills forests was the most cost-effective choice. New Yorkers could enjoy nature's dual gifts forever: affordable clean water and priceless forest beauty. That's biodiversity's indirect value. It manifests through impacts on human living environments. Now, biodiversity's potential use value refers to untapped worth meeting discovery, like medicinal properties. Pharmaceuticals have extracted countless active compounds from wildlife: antimalarials, anesthetics, antibiotics, painkillers, coagulants, cardiac stimulants, anti-inflammation, and more. Many originate from wild species. In U.S. prescription drugs, 25% come from plants, 13% from microbes, and 3% from animals. So, how do we uncover organisms' medicinal value? Today's main drug discovery method involves randomly screening plant and animal tissues for leads, then optimizing any positive reactions. For example, if an organism's tissue inhibits bacterial cell growth, scientists isolate the key molecule and refine its effects at the molecular level. The development of epibadidin is a classic case. In the 1970s, U.S. biochemist John Daly sampled an Ecuadorian poison dart frog. Tests showed tiny toxin doses gave mice opioid-like pain relief without addiction. Could this be the ideal anesthetic? Daly further purified the frog's bodily fluids, isolating and identifying the active component, epibadidine. Epibadidin's anesthetic power is 200 times stronger than opium, but tragically, its extreme toxicity caused addiction and breathing issues in mice, making clinical use impossible. Later, Abbott Labs synthesized epibetadine and created hundreds of similar new molecules, then screened them to find the ideal anesthetic. Tepeclin has anesthetic properties. It doesn't cause drowsiness or have respiratory or digestive side effects, making it widely used in healthcare. However, even with such obvious medicinal potential, only a tiny fraction of biodiversity resources are actually used in medicine. For example, most antibiotics discovered and used today come from ascomycetes.
Yet humans have identified less than 10% of all ascomycete species, leaving vast potential of wild organisms untapped.
And once a wild species goes extinct, all its potential value is lost forever. So even for species with unknown potential, we must cherish and protect them. Biodiversity's countless values are the cornerstone of human progress. So, have humans truly cherished nature's gifts and protected biodiversity?
Part 3. Let's discuss the threats facing biodiversity.
Against the backdrop of increasing deforestation and coral bleaching, science is racing against extinction. In 1987, American botanist John Burley, funded by the National Cancer Institute, led a team to Sarawak in northwest Borneo, Malaysia, seeking natural compounds against cancer and AIDS. They found an extract from a calophyllum tree sample that completely blocked HIV-1-induced cell damage, stopping virus replication, and controlling AIDS progression. Burley returned to Sarawak to collect more of this calophyllum tree's compounds, but unfortunately those trees were gone, likely cut for firewood or building by locals. Burley had to bring back a related species from the same swamp forest, but its extract showed no effect against HIV. Well, luckily, scientists found and collected enough samples at Singapore Botanic Gardens. Soon after, they synthesized the molecule, replicating the original extract's effects, bringing hope to millions with AIDS worldwide. You see, we almost missed a major scientific discovery. However, not every species survives. The rate of biodiversity extinction far exceeds our imagination. A 2019 report from the United Nations Environment Program stated that the current global extinction rate is at least faster than the average over the past 10 million years. What said was this infectious chaos? Tens to hundreds of times faster, and ecosystem health is deteriorating at an unprecedented rate. Since 1900, the average abundance of native species in major terrestrial habitats has declined by at least 20%, with over 40% of amphibian species, nearly 33% of coral reefs, and more than one-third of marine mammals facing survival threats. Between 1980 and 1990, the world lost an average of 9.95 million hectares of forest annually, roughly the size of South Korea. Based on current trends, an estimated 34,000 plant species and 5,200 animal species, including 1/8 of the world's birds, are nearing extinction. Global biodiversity faces a huge crisis, and human activity is the main culprit. After the ancient Greek philosopher Protagoras proposed, "Man is the measure of all things," anthropocentrism gradually prevailed through the Renaissance and modern industrialization. People assumed nature was an object to conquer. All species exist to serve humans, and Earth's resources can be endlessly exploited. In modern times, human resource extraction has escalated through great migrations, agricultural revolutions, and industrial revolutions. For example, giant ships equipped with sonar and large fishing nets have nearly depleted centuries of fishery resources in just decades. The changes in species in Hawaii, USA, demonstrate the impact of human activities on biodiversity. Hawaii once had over 10,000 native plant and animal species, like honeycreepers and woodpeckers, many unique to the islands. In 400 AD, Polynesian voyagers first arrived in Hawaii. Unrestricted hunting, logging, land clearing, and farming gradually reduced native species and disrupted the ecosystem. Of Hawaii's native birds, only 35 species remain today, and 24 of those are endangered. Today, Hawaii's biodiversity is still rich, but it's mainly composed of introduced species like larks, pigeons, eagles, mynas, finches, honey creepers, macaws, and waxbills. These introduced species further squeeze the living space of native organisms, leading to even lower biodiversity. Hawaii, being far from the mainland, can serve as a natural lab, showing how the environment suffers from external disturbances and impacts. Biologists classify these external forces as habitat destruction, invasive species, pollution, overpopulation, and overharvesting. If humans let these forces continue unchecked, we'll eventually face nature's backlash. People rely on ecosystems to purify air and water, and all living things in nature are interdependent and mutually constraining. The extinction of each species signals that many others may soon die, and even poses a huge survival threat to humanity itself. For the future of life, we must confront the threats to global biodiversity. Finally, let's look at conservation strategies for biodiversity and find solutions. Amid scientists' constant appeals, people are gradually building environmental awareness, with many organizations and individuals joining conservation work for ecosystems and species. And the author believes the success of environmental protection hinges on government, civil organizations, and scientific research. Can these three pillars cooperate effectively? In environmental protection, governments primarily handle lawmaking and enforcement, treating the environment as a public trust to safeguard. Under UN advocacy, most governments have joined international treaties like the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Montreal Protocol, and the Convention on Biological Diversity, protecting Earth's environment as a whole through cooperation. Governments also continuously enact laws based on national context to protect wildlife and the environment. For instance, China has over 50 environmental laws, like the Marine Environment Protection Law and Nature Reserves Regulations, while countries like Mexico, Ecuador, Brazil, Papua New Guinea, and Madagascar have launched national actions to protect wildlife habitats. Beyond laws, governments boost environmental protection through measures like educating people via campaigns and exhibitions to build awareness, and guiding policies such as promoting new energy vehicles to ease pressure. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs, are the backbone of the global environmental movement, with famous ones like Conservation International, Wildlife Conservation Society, World Wildlife Fund, and the Nature Conservancy. Early NGOs primarily focused on protecting giant pandas, rhinos, elephants, eagles, and other easily recognizable large animals. With growing awareness of ecosystem diversity, NGOs shifted their approach, expanding from flagship species to entire ecosystems and hundreds of lesser-known endangered species. Any region with numerous endangered species typically gains NGO attention and protection. Recently, NGOs made another major shift, moving beyond pure conservation to combining protection with development, turning reserves into economic assets. For instance, in 2000, Conservation International signed a conservation concession agreement with Guyana's government, funding an 80,000-hectare rainforest lease in its remote southeast as a nature reserve. Amerindians living there could still legally continue their traditional fishing and hunting lifestyles. Well, they maintained millennia-old small-scale farming. Beyond collecting rent, Guyana developed tourism, wildlife exploration, and sustainable medicinal plant harvesting, gaining huge economic benefits. This success inspired other environmental groups. In countries like India, Nepal, Brazil, Peru, and Cambodia, environmental groups have signed similar concessions with governments to achieve win-win sustainable development and conservation. The third force in environmental protection is scientific research. Advances in science and tech constantly reshape our understanding of the physical world and our conservation strategies. Progress in computing, statistics, and biology gives us unprecedented insight into global resources. Concepts like ecological footprint and living planet index provide foundations for smarter economic planning. Moreover, genomic breakthroughs help maximize limited resources to boost per capita food yields. Beyond government funding, social capital also plays a key role. And entrepreneurs know darn well that discovering a new substance or molecule could recoup huge R&D costs and rake in massive profits. In 1983, Cetus Corporation in the US discovered thermophilic bacteria in Yellowstone's geothermal springs. Scientists used one of these aquatic thermophiles to create a heat-resistant DNA polymerase enzyme, which is absolutely crucial for DNA synthesis. With this heat-resistant enzyme, scientists can rapidly amplify tiny bits of DNA in lab settings. So it plays a big role in crime forensics. And yeah, COVID-19 PCR tests to detect infections also rely on this enzyme. Cetus Corporation's patents on DNA polymerase bring in crazy profits, earning $200 million a year and still climbing. By this point, we've seen the wonders of biodiversity and the challenges it faces. Biodiversity is the key to holding the world together. Humans can't just walk alone between heaven and earth. For Earth, human interests aren't top priority. We're only temporarily at the peak. Earth doesn't need humans to save it. It's humans who need saving themselves. Only by treasuring nature's gifts can humans share a sustainable future with Earth's vibrant life. That wraps up this book summary. Find the notes below the audio, and we'll catch you next time.